that Philly game, that first game of the two out of three, had we won that, momentum shifts could very easily have, gone to the next round and on. But, of course, we didn't win it. But it was a bit of an odd ending. Halsey certainly wasn't right. We really got unlucky that he had that injury right before the playoffs. And give him credit, he gave it his best shot. And then, a few bleeders go through, and I know Nolan talks about, gee, I wish I could have done more. His expected batting average in that game, he hit the ball hard. And so, it's just baseball. And sometimes you're on the right side of it, and sometimes you're not on the right side of it. We've been on the right side of it more often than not. So I don't really think about, not having won an individual game. I mean, they're short series. The Dodger game that we lost, that was anybody's ball game. They won it in, walk-off fashion, and we just couldn't score. So, the longer series, the 4 out of 7s, the 3 out of 5s, are a little different. And, 1 and out, 2 and out here last year, but the year before, 1 and out. Kind of, it's baseball,
I would kind of
there,
add,
oh, go on, sorry.
I was just going to add that I think in December or November and December, it's really hard to think about playoff construction. You really want your goal is to get a team that can make the playoffs and do well over a 162 game season. I think when you talk about playoff strategy, it seems like a more relevant conversation at like the deadline and towards the very end of the season when you're making roster decisions, and hopefully you have an opportunity to set your roster or your rotation if you've had a really good season. So those to me are the decisions that can be related to your question about postseason construction.
That's a good point. And if I can follow up, I guess the point I'm trying to make is in regards to being aggressive. And you look at the calculus being changed by some of these other owners. I'm not here to name names, and you look at the New York Mets, and then of course you look at the success of the Dodgers and the Astros annually in the NLCS, ALCS, World Series. Yes, there is a crapshoot that is the postseason, but those two teams have cracked the code, if you will. So I guess the question would be: is there a hunger to maybe look at how you're doing things possibly differently, or stay the status quo?
Well, I wouldn't say status quo. I would say that we make every effort to have the best team we can possibly have. And you get to the point of what can I do to actually make it better? And what is that cost? And I don't mean necessarily what you pay a guy. What is that overall cost over a period of time? And is that worth, throwing all your eggs in one basket, hoping this is the year or next year's the year, rather than, building and having a really good team and more coming, hopefully. So, I think one of the good things about this offseason is Contreras, cost us a draft choice, but other than that, we retained all of our top 100 players. I think we have 6 in the top 100. So, and we got some that are really in the top echelon. So we didn't have to move any of them or trade any of them. Mo worked the market on other catchers, and of course, they're always asking for what you don't want to give. And I'd rather spend dollars than talent, particularly young talent that has a chance to be impactful over the years.
Bill, you mentioned that the odds change with a 5-game series and a 7-game series. Does that also mean that the importance of finishing first and second now in the National League is different with the new playoff structure? You have to kind of think beyond the division and how you now compete within the league to avoid kind of maybe, for lack of a better word, the uncertainty of a shorter series.
Yeah, I think, look, we try to put the best team on the field we can, and hopefully it's a playoff. I believe it's a playoff caliber team this year, and we'd like to do that every single year if we can. It's hard though because there are a lot of teams out there trying to do the same thing, and I think we're in a really good spot. We've got a good team, a really good team in my opinion. Good blend of older players, young players who have performed, and we have not had to sacrifice the future for it. So, if we can continue to do that, I'm confident we'll have success over time. And, when I say over time, I'm very enthused about the team we have this year. And, some of the young players we had last year have developed and did well for us, have a chance to be even that much better this year. Not to mention the fact that we've got, two of the best players in the league, in both leagues, in Major League Baseball. So, as I say, I think we're in a good spot. Great system, strong Major League club, and if we can have that every year, that'd be pretty exciting.
I guess I wonder if the value of winning the division has been lessened. For a long time, you guys have prided on being the NL Central champs. Has that been lessened by the new playoff?
Well, I think, obviously you've got to win a number of games. So the more games you win, the more apt you are to have the home field advantage and, not have to go through the early round. But we're still trying to win as many games as we possibly can win.
The price of baseball going through the roof, does it concern you guys? Especially in the National League, a lot of the biggest spenders are in the National League now. Does that widening gap kind of concern you?
Well, we do have big spenders in the National League, no question about that. And, we'll see how that all plays out. But, it's a competitive game, and, we'll do our best to compete with the biggest of the spenders. So we're not in a position to be the biggest of the spenders. This past season, we were 12th out of 30 teams in revenue, and we were 12th out of 30 teams in payroll. So we're kind of where we are. It's not to say we can't, if opportunity presents itself that we can spend some money and improve the club, we'll do it. But, it's hard to do. And, we don't want to do something that down the road we're going to say, oh, we're stuck with this. And, it would prevent us from doing at that point in time what we'd like to do. So,
I guess that's my point was that if we have this conversation every year, how many years until we say no? We have to change things up because it's been 9, 10, to your point.
yeah, well, as you noticed, there are a lot of long-term contracts this year from free agency, and it's one team does it, and then then the next team does it. So each to his own, and it's we look at today's game, we look at next year's team, and hopefully we can continue to have winning teams year in, year out, playoff type teams that have a chance to win a world championship.
Bill, when we spoke to Mo on Saturday, he said that you all had some conversations about what his future looks like beyond 2020. How would you characterize those conversations, and sort of where do you see the future of operations?
Well, first of all, Mo's done a great job for us, and I'm a big fan of his abilities as a president of baseball operations. And I know the questions came up about how come you haven't extended him, and we've had conversations, but we haven't really gotten into a lot of discussions about it. He's been busy doing what he's doing. And, so I think when we get into Florida, we'll sit down and see what everybody wants to do. But from my perspective, he's done a great job, and he's top echelon of baseball people. There was I don't know who wrote it, or maybe it was just one person I read where he was in the top 5 out of 30 heads of baseball, and I think that speaks well for him, and I think it's accurate. He's done a great job.
Well, to John's point earlier, it is a difficult position for a market like St. Louis, based on a small market geographically that does relatively well in terms of revenue. What are some of the challenges that you're facing as you see the spending model increasing nationally that are relative to just St. Louis?
Well, as I said, we were 12th in revenue, and that's drawing. What did we draw? 3-3. I think we were second in baseball in attendance. But you get into the bigger markets, and they have other revenue sources. Their prices are higher. They generate way more revenue, particularly the top 6 or 7 teams. And but it's a competitive game. But if we do the right things, and so far I feel like we've done a pretty good job, we can compete with them. I'm not concerned about it. Well, they do what they do, and kind of we do what we do. It's not just money. It's judgment, and you can get excited about a player that's on another team, and you give him a massive contract, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't.
So with Jordan Walker looming in the outfield discussion and Mason Wynn flying up, it's easy to see why you guys were maybe hesitant to give out a long-term deal for shortstop or outfield. What were your thoughts on the starting pitching market, kind of where the rotation is right now? A lot of options, but maybe not someone that is obviously with Adam and his history, but kind of the top end of the rotation. Is that something that's a concern for you entering the season?
Well, let's hope Jack Flaherty's back to being Jack Flaherty, and then we have, certainly at the top of the rotation starter there. And, I like our other starters as well. We have talented young starters coming who have a chance to be really good. That starting pitching market got really strong, and without naming names, but some of them have had injury histories, and so you're betting that you're not going to have that, and you're betting that the length of those contracts will work out. So, not that we wouldn't go after a good starter, and I know Mo checked in, but so from our perspective, it's kind of a risk reward proposition.
So I know you mentioned farming kind of with the developments down there. The off-field developments with minor leaguers being representation for the union. You know what that's going to look like on an organizational level for you guys?
Well, I can comment. The question was about minor league unionization.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's probably something that likely will lead to some cost increases at that level. As you guys know, MLB is different from the other leagues in that we fund our minor league systems to the tune of about, 10% of the total revenue pie goes to that in one form or another. So, but, it is what it is. We certainly don't take a leadership role in that level of negotiation. So it's just a new dynamic that we'll have to work within.
Bill, I'm curious from your perspective, given some of the uncertainty with RSNs at the moment, so much that the revenue stream that's important for teams, how much do you you all have to do from a contingency standpoint, or sort of looking down the road at what the RSN market might look like in 2-5 years and how that affects your business?
Well, yeah, and he can comment on this too, but MLB is doing a lot of work, and they're really, I think, on the cutting edge of understanding that industry, because every team's dealing with it in one form or another, whether a team owns a piece of its RSN or whether a team is just receiving rights fees. There are lots of models out there, but the bottom line is the overall economics of RSNs have been in decline, and that's concerning to us and all of sports. It's not just baseball, it's hockey and basketball, and to a lesser extent football, because they're nationalized under media. But it's something that we have to be cognizant of. We're one of the Valley sports teams. There's 20 of them, I think.
I don't think quite that.
Well, if you count, depends if you count Cubs or Yankees or partly. But anyway, a big chunk of the teams are Valley, which is a Diamond Sports entity, which has a lot have been written about their financial situation. So it's a risk factor for us going forward, but I think MLB is on the case and has a lot of contingency planning in place that should something happen there, we feel good that there's a game plan.
You all look at the model the Cubs have, for example, with Marquee, or similar to the Yankees with the aspirations. Do you see an opportunity there? Is there a future you can imagine with the Cardinals where that looks more like what your model could be?
Well, their models are not actually that different than ours. I mean, we have a piece of our network, but Cubs have, I think, a little bigger piece maybe. But they sort of the Cubs did their deal more recently, and the Yankees have been in yes for a long time. But so it's just a slightly different model, but big picture they look not too dissimilar.
It's a concern and a fluid situation. There's no question about it, and it's something's going to happen sooner rather than later, and it's a concern. I mean, it's a big part of our revenue stream. We have nice rights fees, and the RSN model is at risk.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but I mean, when you all model what your next couple of financial years look like, is there a version of that includes what happened if the checks stopped coming for a period from the RSN?
We're operating like it's going to stay, but the reality is there's going to be change.
How important for you all, with as much of a regional team as the Cardinals are, and the Caravans show that, the radio network really shows that. How important is the blackout policy when this is all sorted out, and maybe the areas that you could then reach, say Iowa, which is in a dead zone, through whether it's streaming or whatever model emerges? Is that an essential part for the Cardinals to have worked out, the blackout policy?
It is. I mean, it's especially important for us because we do have a regional fan base, and our subscribers have been declining because the model has, most favored nation agreements that, if somebody is paying a lesser amount in an outlying city, then, I'm not going to pay what I'm paying here. And it's, it's complicated, but, we've lost subscribers, not because they don't want to watch Cardinal baseball, but, it's just not as available. So I think, things are definitely going to change. MLB's on the case. And I think you'll see, I don't know how long it's going to take, but, in a not too long period of time, it's going to be a different delivery system where everyone will have an opportunity to watch Cardinal baseball. So it's complicated. We're hoping for the best because it's a big part of our revenue.
Would you like blackouts to be gone? I mean, would you like that not? Would you like those to be over in a streaming world?
Well, I think ideally you'd make Cardinal baseball available to and particularly in our broader market, those who would like to see it. And, builds our fan base. We're a regional fan base.
I would just add, Derek, that the territorial rights geography of MLB is like 100 years old, maybe. I mean, it's been modified with expansion, but you can imagine it creates distortions because of the antiquated nature of it. And there's a lot of talk at owners' meetings about cleaning it up, put it that way. And it's a bigger issue than just us, but I think these blackout areas are really problematic in baseball, and everybody knows it. And I think a lot of teams that used to protect areas because, those are our fans. We don't want, Cubs fans getting there when they're Cardinals. That stuff, I mean, for us is needs to get cleaned up. So we're hopeful that some of that gets solved through this local media rights changing of the guard.
Bill, without commenting on any specific free agents, there was a fairly high-profile situation where a player was given the longest suspension in the history of MLB's domestic violence policy recently, became a free agent. This is sort of a caretaker of the organization, someone obviously has guided this organization through many years. Do you have an opinion and perspective on, from the team perspective, what it would mean to pick up the mantle and give a chance to a player like that? Is that something that you would be comfortable with?
I think you'll find out as time goes on what clubs are willing to do. I'm not sure I should be saying one thing or another on that situation, but I think our actions will indicate, and others too. I don't know where that's headed.
You guys have any updates on the play-by-play job with Bally's? Where you are in the process, or how much interest you've gotten from
I'll let
candidates?
you do that one. I've been working on that.
Yeah, Bally Sports Midwest takes the lead on hiring that position, and they've received a few resumes. Let's just leave it at that. And we're in close contact with them. They share kind of what they're seeing and who kind of their list of good candidates is. And they're in an interview process right now. And we'll probably join that with them a little bit. So it's really their job to fill, but they're very good about communicating with us, getting our take and getting our feedback as they make that decision. And I would see it probably coming to a conclusion in the next few weeks.
Do you see a St. Louis native or someone who understands the culture of your organization having an edge in that sort of position?
I think that's a positive aspect of somebody's resume. I wouldn't say it's the only factor, but when you look at it, there's some great outside candidates who've done some great stuff. The baseball play-by-play folks, guys that are or women who have done other sports who are interested. Some of them have St. Louis connections, so it's sort of, I would say that's part of the mix.
Gary Lark mentioned last night that as you read every prospect report, your view on Jordan this offseason for him, but also what you've seen from him as you've been following his rapid rise. How excited are you about what could be in front of him?
Yeah, he's really a great prospect in every way. I check in with those who have seen him or worked with him, and first thing they say, I said, Jordan Walker looks like a pretty good player. He's a great kid. He sort of checks all the boxes. He's admired by his teammates. He's a winner. He's and a big talent. So it's very exciting to have a player like that 20 years old is knocking on the door of the big leagues.
Bill, you served on the rules committee, and I'm wondering how much the committee and you want to look at this coming year, all these new rules and maybe unintended consequences of introducing them all at once? Is that something you have to monitor closely?
Well, they're different. I don't think they sort of connect. Maybe in a way they do, but I was a big advocate for all of them really, but particularly the shift because I felt like, it's really tough on certain left-handed hitters and just in some ways kind of unfair. And I know people think that, well, there's going to be some way to, change that and, overcome the new rule. We'll see. I don't think so. But, and I think the pitch clock, it just, the dead time in the game is there's no action when, you have a slow pitcher or somebody who's out of the box all the time. And you see what happens in the minor leagues, and by and large, the players liked it because they don't want 3-hour and 10-minute games. They want to play in 2 hours and 40 minutes. So whatever it turns out to be. I think, the pitch clock and the shift are great changes, and everyone will adjust. The step-off rule, I think, will be interesting. Should be some more stolen bases. The bases are a little bit bigger, but you get closer to, with both bases, first to second. I think I'm excited to see it all play out.
It's a beautiful symmetry possibly this year with Scott Rowland potentially going into Cooperstown, and you having maybe the greatest fielding third. We're both really great. In Arenado, can you describe just how, for lack of a better word, how cool it is that Rowland could go to the Hall of Fame, and then in the present, you've got Arenado doing his thing?
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I mean, the fact that we have both of those players, and Roland had his best years here, which is, I remember the MV 3 years, which was pretty cool. So I'm excited for that, and hopefully that works out. And what can I say about Nolan Arenado? He's just everything you could want in a baseball player. And he's driven. He's, both sides of the ball. He can do it all. So we're really fortunate to have him as a